Hello and welcome to ETBFSI.com. We all are aware about the digital transformation in some or the other forms. Financial institutions and specifically the BFSI companies have adopted in some or the other forms, and we have been using digital very aggressively. But to understand, whether we can have an all-accomplished solution through the digital, I have with me four remarkable speakers here, and we are trying to understand the financial services operation ensuring all around experience. So, let me introduce all the speakers one by one. My first speaker is Mr. KV Dipu, President and Head of Operations and Customer Experience, Bajaj Allianz General Insurance. Dipu, welcome to this discussion.
Thank you, Amol. Looking forward to an engaging discussion with all of you.
Great. Same here. I'm also looking forward to an engaging discussion. My next speaker is Mr. R. Balaji, Group CTO, IIFL Finance. Mr. Balaji, welcome to this discussion.
Thank you, Amol.
My next speaker is Mr. Durgaprasad Swaminathan, the SVP CIO, Cholamandalam Investment and Finance Company. Durgaprasad ji, welcome to this discussion.
Thank you, Amol, and great to be part of this session.
Glad to have you also, sir. My last speaker for this particular discussion is Venugopal Subbarao, Director Solutions Consulting ServiceNow. Venugopal ji, welcome to this discussion.
Thank you. Welcome. It's great and honor to listen to all the elite panelists here. Super energy, high energy gentlemen here. Looking forward to have a great conversation.
Thank you, Venu. So, glad to have all of you here, and I'm trying to, decode some of the digital transformation journeys you guys had. Obviously, each and every financial institution today has adopted certain level of digital, and now they're scaling up to the another level. But the question here is, how are they actually trying to give the all-around experience for their customers and their partners, their vendors, and their employees? And we're trying to decode all this. So to begin with, I have a few common questions and a few specific questions. To start with the common question which I have for all of you, and I will start with you, Dipu. As there is a surge in digital transformation, the question is, how are financial institutions or specifically BFSI companies ensuring the all-around experience?
No, Amol, I think it's a very relevant question, given the digital way of working and living, that we all are experiencing nowadays. Initially, the accent was on, digitizing the physical. You saw everybody getting into work from home mode and, offering digital assets to employees and customers and partners. But digital assets, while they are clinical and, while they're consistent, customers also need a healing touch. Then the accent, shifted from digitizing the physical to humanizing the digital. So now what firms are doing is blend the science of artificial intelligence with the art of customer centricity to come out with human-centric AI. Therefore, we are entering a digital world, and I'll just maybe give you a couple of examples. If you look at our bot, it does not ask the customer to terminate the chat if it cannot answer a query. It seamlessly transfers it to a human being. So for the customer, it becomes, a one-shot experience. And studies show that NPS can be as high as 96 if it's a one-stop experience for the customer, but it can dramatically fall to as low as 65, if you just break it into two transactions. Similarly, when our customers going for health insurance, hospitalization, they are very, wary of, navigating this complex administrative machinery at hospitals. So we have a virtual relationship manager, who tells them that they only need to worry about recovery. He tells them only focus on moving from illness to wellness. I'll take care of the rest. And we got an NPS done on this. We got a score of 90 without a single detractor. So I think this entire idea of digital servicing and now combining it with the human touch is here to stay as we emerge into whatever form factor of the new normal that we all are going to experience.
Okay, I think that was a good one to start with, Dipu. So, I will, forward the same question to you, Balaji, and would like to take your views. How are the BFSI companies are trying to provide the all-around experience?
I completely agree with what Dipu said. Companies are adopting, the ones that have been adopting slowly, and the pandemic had accelerated them. Bots are something that we have been doing for a couple of years. The acceleration did happen during this pandemic. So bots are of various kinds. There are chat bots, email bots, voice bots, right? I think the focus now is to see if all of the channels can now be automated also to improve the experience instead of waiting long on the queues. Our experience also has been very similar. When the transition is seamless between the bot and the human, the NPS scores do improve a lot. And there are other areas that apart from just the traditional bot story. I mean, AIML has also been enabled by a lot of our partners. For example, these days the antiviruses are also smarter. They are not the older signature based. Even when we do marketing on, let's say, Google's and Facebook's, so those are also now targeted, very targeted. Even the segmentation, when we figure out, and the personal experiences that we give out to the customers, those also have been enhanced by these tools.
Noted, Balaji. I think valid points. Durgaprasad, I would like to take your views also as an opening remark. As you heard the question specifically about the digital transformation, how are the BFSI companies providing or trying to look at the all-around experience?
So I think both Dipu and Balaji covered great points, and I think they covered the spectrum on the customer front. And what I would like to add is, customer is one angle of the whole digital transformation. And what we are also trying to do is, how do we enable our internal teams to also be, when you talk about an NPS score on the customer front, we also, as a technology function, how do we satisfy our internal customers? So part of our focus in the past period has been optimizing the digital experience for our internal customers as well. So, I think Dipu and Balaji covered great points on, the customer side. What we are doing is trying to leverage the same technology. So in terms of enabling whether it's our field force or our staff across different functions, to say how can they get better at what they do, whether it's a combination of tools to eliminate any kind of process friction, or being able to give them newer data or a comprehensive data models for them to get better at what they do, whether it's our treasury function or our risk function. So that's kind of the other aspect of digital transformation that I think covers across the enterprise. So one is what is external facing transformation, and also focusing on what happens within the enterprise for our internal functions.
Okay, internal and external, I think valid points, Durgaprasad ji. Venu, I will come to you and I will tweak the question, slightly for you. We heard, the executives from the financial institutions. Since your perspective, I would like to have specifically on what is that you learn from the BFSI companies, specifically in terms of they are offering all around experience.
Yes, I think great points. When Dipu said about humanizing the digitization, and then Balaji talked about AIML, and when Durga said it's not about customers alone, because the work is through the employees. So this is an experience era, right? We moved from an utility era to an engagement era, and then now it is an experienced era. And in this era is where you have multiple generations working together as a team for a common outcome. Of course, purpose drives them, but how do we make those experiences easy for each one of them as they interact with their individual workspaces and work itself? A customer servicing experience is one, a customer or a partner, an outward experience. And in that experience, what we are hearing is about how do I call it as, how do I convert that 7 minutes of complaint resolution to 5+2, which is 5 for complaint, 2 for revenue. So for making that happen, you need to have a seamlessly connected systems. And for employees, they need to have the right systems, which brings that productivity in place. Okay. So this is an important area that we are talking about. For an employee life cycle itself, and as Durga was pointing out, from hiring to retiring, the life cycle, it touches around 100 and 150 tools that are required. How do we connect all of them and make one seamless experience, both for the user and the person who's managing it from an operations point of view? These are some of the areas that have been determining in this experience era. And last but not the least is all are wound by this weave of thread called risk. How do we mitigate risk that is associated with all these touch points? At a starting level, I think this is good enough. We'll continue to have more.
Sure, Venu. In fact, risk is a very important part, and in fact, integral part of the digitalization. We cannot have a digitalization without thinking of the risk and the security aspect. That we will come at the last specifically. But let me come with some specific questions, obviously, on the theme. Thanks for the opening remarks from all of you. And Deepu, let me come back to you. To begin with, obviously, we partly mentioned about the AI and ML capabilities. But if we pick up 3 points specifically, one is customer service, second is employee experience, and third is IT experience. So, how are you leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning capabilities for enhancing this?
No, I think it's multidimensional. Like you rightly said, it's not just about customers. It's also about partners and employees and the overall IT framework. Now, coming to customers, Amol, I told you about how we leverage AI, from the perspective of our bot, right? Because the bot is intelligent enough to ensure that, the customer gets, uninterrupted service. So clearly, that's where we leverage AI. Now, coming to our employees, what we have also done, for example, is we've launched automated hiring. So our, interviewees, they don't need to travel to our offices. They can basically go to the nearest, cyber cafe, and we actually won a global award for this. And they can basically log into this system. We call it Talport, and then they get interviewed. It basically assesses body language, and interviews them. So it's a win-win for us as well as for the interviewee. One, they don't have to travel, and for us, because it can conduct all the preliminary interviews, we save a lot of man hours. So clearly, that's one area where we've leveraged AI, from from an employee perspective. Now, thirdly, coming to IT, AI spans the entire landscape. One is, of course, you use AI when it comes to cybersecurity, because all the activities are not necessarily performed by human beings. So AI is leveraged in terms of carrying out various cybersecurity operations. The other is across our entire enterprise, whether it is customer servicing, whether it is partner servicing, whether it is employee servicing. There are multiple areas where we leverage AI, whether it is in terms of the business intelligence that we have, whether it is in terms of the opportunities for revenue, right? The next best action that we offer to our customers, whether it is about targeted servicing, whether it is in our actuarial models. I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, the entire enterprise uses various aspects of AI throughout.
I mean, I'm like really excited to understand how do you actually interview those people, and do you really understand this body languages? Like, you have hired like absolutely robots or something, and how do they actually understand the body language?
Yeah, so basically we have taught it. So what it does is, you go into this cyber cafe, and then you basically speak to it. It talks to you like a human being. And, when you are gesticulating, right, your hands move, your eyes move, your eyelids move, your mouth moves, it just picks up all that. And then, it gives you, an assessment, based on, how the candidate was doing. So we get a report. And over a period of time now, we have seen, it's been fairly accurate. So that's why, as I said, it's won us a global award. It saved us a lot of, man hours. And even interviews are happy. Now they don't have to travel to the nearest location. Imagine in the pandemic also we could interview. Just go to the nearest one and then, cyber cafe, because many people do not have the infra at home, and then just log in and you pick your time. You can even go 10:30 p.m. in the night, right? I mean, it just not have to worry about, scheduling, conflicts, right? It just worked wonders for us. I can have a different discussion with you and take you through all the details.
No, sure, Deepu, quite interesting. I think a lot of bankers have also started using that as a robotic, and during pandemic, or many BFSI companies have started doing virtual hiring. So, I will go ahead with the same questions to other panelists as well. So, Balaji, I will bring you here into the picture. Obviously, in the first opening remarks, all of you partly mentioned about the customer experience. But if you look at these 3 points, customer experience, employee experience, and IT experience, how are you, planning to leverage AI, ML capabilities to enhance the following?
Definitely. So experience, experience is the most important thing. Like Venu also did mention, right? People carry stories back after they have experiences. So obviously, improving the experience means that there is speed and accuracy that is required. There are only so many people we can add with when we want to increase, when we are as a growing organization, right? So that's where a lot of these machines and automation do come into play. Right? Like I did mention about bots, etc. But it is also about not pestering the customer, right? So when organizations do send out a lot of emails, calls, SMSs, etc., right, wildly in the hope that somebody may like what I'm offering, right? Instead of that, instead of bothering everyone, why not identify the right customer, right needs, and then personalize the offer to them. And that also improves the experience, right? Then similarly for employees, like Durgaprasad did mention, right, there is a lot of work that also needs to be done for the employees. So you and me, right? As a person, we use products from Google, Facebook, and all the large companies out there, and we do expect that kind of finis even in our staff facing applications. The expectation has changed from our internal customer also. So we have built a lot of modern interfaces for our employees, and also use a lot of machine learning to identify what needs to be done by whom and how, right? So that we are not constantly targeting or bombarding various users. Even from the IT experience, I think the stuff like UX, I think has grown in the recent past a lot, right? So UX practices have been applied to identify what exactly are the needs of both the internal and the external customer before we actually start any work.
True. I think very, very valid points, Balaji, because we often speak to a lot of people, and sometimes on our website, people also, specifically the customers, raise complaints. And the valid point which I have always learned from their issues is the banks or the financial institutions bombard them with the promotional mails, right? So I think when you speak specifically about the modern interface, I think these kind of issues can be addressed over there, right? I think valid points, Balaji. Durgaprasad ji, do you have any view here? How do you look at customer experience, employee experience, and IT experience?
Yep, sure. I think great points covered by both Dipu and Balaji. And actually, in one of our previous discussions, I think there was a mention of IT moving from being the backbone to the brain, being the brain of the organization. And I think effectively AI and ML kind of helps IT play that role. Move from kind of what was originally an enabler or a backbone, especially for BFSI, to being the brain, because whether it is the way you want to approve in our case a loan, all of that is kind of built into a model, and just goes through and says, okay, here is a loan for you at this rate or this duration, and gives kind of a very good turnaround and positive experience to the customer on one hand. And what we are trying to do is like the bots that are there for customers, we are having similar bots embedded within our HRMS for our employees to have kind of almost a positive experience in the way they interact for any aspects of services or queries they may have as being part of the organization. So trying to make sure that a lot of the questions that would have taken longer for them trying to reach out, and given we're kind of geographically very widespread, making sure they get the queries and things sorted out in a quick time. These kind of tools are helping us do that. The third part, from an IT perspective, security, like Dipu said, is a great area where AI is critical, because ability to correlate kind of millions of events happening and making sure, is that something real threat or is it a false positive, is where these kind of tools come into picture. What we are now trying to do is see whether we can explore some of the AI ops related tools to say, how do I stand from my current systems that I have within the organization? Is there something that could be a signal of an impending downtime? Is there something that needs to be done that will give me a better prediction of the way I need to handle the capacity of my systems? Right. So some of them I would say are baby steps, and maybe, and some of the other layers maybe more kind of static models rather than a true AI ML, but I think it's a progressive journey that organizations are taking there.
Yes, absolutely. It's a progressive journey, no doubt about it, Durgaprasad. I will come to you, Venu, and I will slightly spin this question, because you heard all three panelists talking specifically about customer experience, employees, and employee experience and IT experience as well. My question to you, Venu, is in two parts. One is, how do you see the BFSI companies are leveraging the AI and ML capabilities to enhance what we discussed, obviously customer, employee, IT, and what are the major challenges they face?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and there's a lot of convergence of thought here. I think one important point is about, there is a recognition that there need to be technology driven and that is predictable, and behavior analysis plays a very important role at the customer side in terms of how do we sense the behavioral pattern. And I think Balaji also alluded that we don't want to bother the customer unnecessarily. How else could you do? You could sense certain aspects of it, and these are rules, these are contexts that are set, and that's where AI plays a very important role and continues to learn and bring in a lot of value to that. Secondly, at a field level, what happens is that somebody goes to the field. How do we ensure that that field activity is also powered by ML rather than a person taking decisions? So how do we make those a possibility? I think internal IT, I'm going to steal your quote, IT moving backbone to brains is very important, because at the end of the day, the IT resilience, operation resilience is the most talked about thing here. Plus, companies outages are inevitable. We have to face it some point or other to some reasons or the other. Today in this world, we've seen that even the more matured countries have had outages, had bandwidth problems more than us. So the fact of the matter is that how do we manage this operational resilience by having those concepts like CMDB is one thing we've heard, right? The CI to the service relationship. That is getting elevated to a newer nomenclature called common services data model, which means that the same asset is, you can use it for an employee lifecycle or a customer lifecycle, but it is also for an IT lifecycle. The CMDB is moving to a CSDM. So these are concepts that we are seeing, but are being leveraged by the banks these days. On the business side, you see that there's one is bank is which deals with liabilities and other with the assets. In terms of an asset movement was super critical at this time, where there's a deceased person and asset needs to be moved from one person to another without bothering that person. How do we manage that higher management of it so that those things are taken care automatically rather than trying to bother somebody? So these are the behavioral aspect of it, customer aspect of it, IT aspect of it. Where are the challenges? The challenges were people who have not gone through this thing had to take up this on an urgent manner. So what had happened is they created experience being the underlining theme, experience. So created mobile and mobile sprawls, and there are bot sprawls happening. I met a company which had 11 bots for different experiences. It is for a joining experience, leaving experience, and so many other bots happening. So it's important that we stitch all of them together into one single platform as one single database, and the conversation could be many. You can talk to me in different languages, but I am this one person, and that's the context we are bringing. And probably that relates to Dipu saying that humanizing the technology itself.
Valid points, Venu. Yes, I think the brain and the backend humanizing the, digitalization, valid points. I think we are learning from the, speakers here. Let me shift my focus specifically from the experience, or specifically the customer experience, employee experience, or the service aspect to the operations aspects now. At one side, what we see is there are robust new age technologies. Okay, so question here is, how can financial institutions streamline the workflows in delivering the right and the best services? So considering front office, middle office, or back office. So Dipu, my first question to you.
I think, Amol, that's a very comprehensive question, right? Because you're looking at how do you span across the entire spectrum.
Right.
So typically, if you see, there are customer-facing assets, then there is a middleware, and then you have your core platform. So, for example, if you look at our core platform, what we have done, what a lot of firms are doing, is even as you transform it, you're looking at hosting it on the cloud, because that gives you multiple advantages. You avoid hardware obsolescence. You're also able to convert your siloed data marts into one single data lake, and thereby get a holistic view of the customer. Secondly, coming to middleware, for us, our investment in middleware ensured that we were able to ensure work from home, because earlier a lot of softwares were accessible only from the office for security reasons. With the investment in the right middleware, we were able to ensure access to this from home. Now, coming to customer facing assets, I think the key is omni-channel, because what happens is we need to be present where the customer is. If you notice, earlier we had call centers, but when the pandemic happened, call centers shut down. Now, the good thing, for example, for us is we had already invested in digital assets, because you cannot do that overnight. We were present where the customer was present. A lot of people in India are very conversant with WhatsApp. We launched all our services in WhatsApp prior to COVID-19. We had built all frictionless, seamless digital journeys on our mobile app. We had also set up a customer portal. So when the call centers shut down, For us, it was a switch without a single glitch. We were able to seamlessly move customers. And in fact, at that time, as I said, the proof of the pudding lies in the eating. Our customer grievances fell by 90%. It was a revelation even to us that as we migrated customers, from call centers to digital assets, our grievances fell by 90%. So I think if you look at it holistically, transformation of the core by hosting on the cloud, a middleware which allows access to software from home in a secure manner, and omni-channel presence through customer assets. I think this end-to-end digital journey that we stitched really helped us not just survive, but thrive through the entire crisis.
Okay, noted, Dipu. Balaji, what would you like to add here? Because we are discussing specifically about three aspects. One is front office, middle office, and back office. So how are finance companies, trying to focus offering this connected workflow?
Definitely. So we too adopted cloud a couple of years ago. We went full-fledged on cloud a couple of years ago. The journey started about 4 years ago.
Right.
So it was easy for employees to actually access those systems from home. Not just the traditional applications, but also the call center, etc., was on cloud for us. But I want to address this on a different angle. So when we talk about since we are focusing primarily on experiences on all of this front, middle, and back, I think it's predominantly either STP and FTR. I'll explain this briefly. STP is straight-through processing, right? As few human hands that it sits on, the faster the turnarounds are, right? That is what we have been trying to address for the last 3-4 years. There's improvements everywhere, but that's the eventual goal. Reduce it as much as possible. And FTR is getting it right the very first time, right? So that both the experience for the front office, middle office, and the back office is much more superior than having to rework or retry the same transaction multiple times. So not just providing the digital capabilities like Dipu did mention about WhatsApp and other channels, right? So we have also been present on a lot of these areas. We also focus predominantly on getting it right the very first time and ensuring that it goes through end to end with as few human interaction as possible.
Okay, noted, Balaji. Durgaprasad, do you want to add something here?
First time right, I think is absolutely important if you want to provide the right experience. Our focus has been to make sure, can we eliminate process frictions across these layers? So on one hand, you have the whole sourcing team that is, getting new customers, so the data flows in from there to our credit and underwriting teams, and then back to the actual, kind of receipting and disbursement that happen in a lending organization. So making sure there's a seamless flow of information. So, ability for, say, the field team to be able to do, let's say, on a tablet device, but the same information is available to somebody in the office to, go through the underwriting part of the process, and then maybe, an operations team to finally handle the disbursement. So all of them being able to look in a consistent fashion. There is no, multiple windows to switch across applications. So whether it is an application data or a document related to the application is something that we have focused on to make sure there is that seamless workflow. So if there is a back and forth, let's say there is a query that needs to come from one of the layers back to the one in the field, all that happens without people having to switch through multiple channels. I think that's something where, the whole aspect of, continuity and seamless nature of flow comes into picture. And I think Dipu also mentioned around, the whole data aspect, right? Meaning, how do you bring it all together in a consistent form for somebody to look at a customer from a customer 360 kind of view? So that's, again, a whole enabling layer that comes across with this.
Okay, I think valid points here. Let me get another perspective here from Venu. Venu, as you know that, you heard all three speakers also, and it is crucial aspect for all the financial companies to streamline the workflows to deliver the, right or the best services, right? So how are finance companies, do you think, can offer the better workflow in terms of, connecting front office, middle office, and back office?
Yeah, see, at the end of the day, I think Durga brought in so many points that we usually use, which are friction and making work flow. The front office is the omni-channel, right? The experience layer. The back office is the systems of record, the core banking and others that we use. In between is where the work flows. It's collaborating. It's collaborating with multiple entities, departments, processes, and makes that talk to the systems of record and bring a storyline to the frontline agent to make the conversation seamless, making that 7 is equal to 5 plus 2, making that 5 quicker. And that's what, probably the STP and FTR plays a very important role. The middle layer plays a very important role because that's where the workflow happens. And this is the time where banks choose to automate their procurement process, their finance process, their onboarding of employees, rollout of branches. See, branch rollout is also a same team which has to follow through for one branch to another bank. The process followed, the checklists are the same. But in terms of creating those digital twins when it has to be done, is the process the stamp that goes on. So these are some of the areas about how do we make a blueprint of one replicate another so that you can make it faster. So at the end of the day, looking at double clicking into each of these entities and see, is there a possibility of making it faster? Not just at one layer, but every layer. And I say that making work flow, because this is the time where we are reinventing the work itself. Is this the way we should be doing, or is there a better way to do it? So, and that's where we try to imagine, and platforms like ServiceNow is helping in making rapid application developments happen. And within this, you have this mobility and virtual agents and the workflow together to make these experiences possible.
Okay, I think valid points. We discussed service and the operations parts as well. And now comes the most important part, like we discussed partly in our opening comments, is the risk or the safety of the customers, of the company, of the employees and everything, right? So I will start by asking you, Dipu, and the question is very important in terms of the safety. So safety of customer, employees, and also the partners are much needed during these times. What do you think about building trusted network for safe and continued operations?
Absolutely a critical and sometimes a slightly underrated factor, Amol. Whether it's any of these three constituencies. So I see it as a combination of two aspects. One is the human dimension, and the other is the tool dimension. So when it comes to employees, from a safety perspective, from a tool perspective, of course, cybersecurity, tools do come in, and they come in from both perspectives. Which is one is about employees themselves not doing anything funny, and similarly protecting them, from falling prey to anything. So clearly, that's one dimension where we have introduced the tool, and also from a training perspective, we have sensitized them. The other safety aspect is, of course, around COVID-19 and all that. It brings in a form of ramification. So we've had a series of communications, with our employees, and we've really demonstrated empathy to employees. So that's clearly, one aspect. Now, coming to our partners, we've told our partners that they are a family, and we have told them that they can avail of the same facilities that we offer to our employees. So I think that's something which has really pleased them. And then similarly, from a trust perspective, since they have to continue to offer an uninterrupted service, we enable them. We gave them all access to services, using apps and mobile, tabs. So they were very happy that the company trusted them because we're giving them access to our software, and that's clearly building trust. So that's the second aspect. Thirdly, coming to customers, our motto is caringly yours. So right at the start, we sent out a massive, communication to all our customers, telling them to take care. And from a tool perspective, we went out of our way by meeting unstated needs. For example, when people couldn't go to hospitals during the lockdown, we actually came out with the doctor on chat feature. So our customers could log into our mobile app, take a digital consultation from our list of empaneled doctors, and then, just go and buy medicine. So they just loved it because this is not a core insurance offering. Similarly, at the onset of the pandemic, when they couldn't go and get themselves tested, we came out with an AI-driven bot in 10 languages by which they could get themselves tested for COVID-19 in the comfort of their homes. We also launched a contact tracing feature called social trackback, before Arogya Setu. So when customers saw that, we had backed up our communication to them on Caringly Yours with these assets, and these were all, going beyond stated needs, they just loved it. When we got an NPS done, we found that we enjoyed the highest scores in the industry by a significant margin over our competitors. And they said that's because we were able to clearly live up to our motto of caringly yours. So I think empathy coupled, along with strong tools and cybersecurity, I think trust, just zoomed dramatically.
Okay, valid points, Dipu. I think if we, exclude health and pharma, which are obviously very, very important sectors. BFSI companies have done a fairly good job in last 1 year specifically. I mean, insurance companies came with a customized policy, specifically COVID-19 Suraksha Kavach and everything. And, NBFCs, I'm sure Balaji and Durgaprasad will have a lot to add there in terms of financing. Digital lending also grew rapidly. I think very, very valid points. But that is why safety becomes really an important aspect here. So in fact, I was talking to a banker and he said, I would have never imagined that we will give a VPN access to our employees, right? Which happened during the pandemic. So Balaji, I will take the same question forward with you. And if you would like to add, what are the best things that you did specifically in terms of protecting the safety of the customers, building a trusted network during pandemic, and how are you going to take it forward?
Dipu covered a lot of ground here. But a couple of things I would like to add to what is already covered without repeating. So like you said, VPN, right? I mean, we did start with VPN about a couple of years ago, but then we moved on into zero trust networks. So our endpoints essentially support who needs to be connected, how they need to be connected. So, and we have been on cloud for quite some time now, for years now. So the access was never an issue there. So that eased up a lot of work for most of the people. In fact, we are also committed to work from home for quite some time now, for the near visible future. Another angle to that is partner risk evaluation, right? So we regularly onboard a lot of new partners without understanding what their cybersecurity stance is, right? Our risk does extend into into the risk that they also add on. But the number of attacks have also increased during this pandemic. So cybersecurity, the work that cybersecurity team has been doing has been exceptional in the recent past. Those are a couple of things I wanted to cover. But from a fraud detection and identification of fraudulent items, all of those do come in. I mean, those have only increased, and a lot of these tools have actually accelerated during this pandemic. So now better tools are available for identification and validation of these sources in a single go. So the customer experience also has increased primarily because of being able to do all of that.
Durgaprasad, I will tweak the same question to you and I would like you to also add a risk part here, because you are also into the, financing and, digital lending, what you can say, surged a lot during the pandemic. So how did you actually ensure the safety, the risk, and, mitigate it all through the digital? What kind of strategies did you adopt?
So on the risk front, we kind of focus on two different areas. One was, there was a lot of opportunistic attempt by fraudulent elements, saying during the early part of the this whole pandemic, people would say, okay, here is a way to do a free test, and you will realize a lot of kind of fraudulent attempts. Whereas our aim at that point was making sure whether it is our employee or the partners we deal with, we can share our insights and best practices on how to identify what is a truthful one versus what could be a fraudulent or a phishing or something that could lead to an issue later on. And the same thing happened later on, now with subsequent periods around the vaccine kind of scenarios. We see some more upsurge of similar campaigns of people trying to mislead users on different parts. So making sure that's one aspect of safety and risk avoidance that we communicate to the users there. The second was, again, at the same time, there was given the situation at that time, there was a lot of uptake for digital lending, like you rightly said. So, which meant, somebody may go and look for a digital lending, Google and say, who is able to give me a loan on a quick term? And then you may have somebody trying to fraudulently, again, put up, maybe a name of an NBFC and say, hey, contact here, and, we will give you a loan such and such rate, and, you pay such a processing fee. Once the fee is paid, he's out of touch. So we had to, again, work with, different technology partners to say, how do we take down such elements that are available across different channels, whether it is on a Google search or different social media platforms. So that's, again, we started communicating to customers and partners on one hand to say, be aware of these things. At the same time, we also started working to say, how do we, have a mechanism to, identify such things and take them out so that, nobody gets scammed or ends up paying without any return there. So I think that's I think Dipu and Balaji already covered quite a bit on what they did across, like the online doctor and stuff like that. I think that's really useful. There was such a scare element during that part that without this online kind of people would rather be, down with fever and not go to see a doctor. So I think those are really useful at this point in time.
Right. I think online consultation also boomed a lot during this pandemic. And I think BFSI companies, played a major role here. Not only just insurance companies, but like I said, digital lenders, specifically the fintechs and all. So when we are discussing, obviously, the risk and the security part, and I would like you to, give a different perspective here. Because we are still working from home, at least not specifically the banks and the finance companies, but at least half the companies are working from home, half the employees are working from home. And risk becomes a very, very important factor. So how BFSI companies do you think should embed risk into their operations or daily DNA kind of things? How do they ensure that space safer customers? How do they ensure that their customers and employees are absolutely safe and risk free?
I think the expression embed is very important here because at the end of the day, in a regulated industry like banking and finance and insurance, if we try to manage risk from outside, we are trying to make out something. But imagine whatever we do, like the karma, there is an audit trail of what happens, and hence that gets automatically populated to the regulator. Like the APIs is going to be the new normal with the regulator opening up all these things. You would have that every touch point that we do in a digital footprint is visible to everybody else. So in the latest ORX report, last 5 years, the loss on operational risk was around $174 billion. So this is why banks have decided in terms of embedding risk frameworks in whatever that happens. Employee lifecycle took to you mentioned about work from anywhere. That's important because employees, and Balaji also mentioned an important area of access. Access and availability was in abundance. There is a positive connotation to that and a negative connotation to that in terms of how do we prevent that access being misused. So you would have multiple monitoring tools, but how do we ensure that there is sufficient algorithm that goes in of employee hiring in different geographies? How do we ensure that we follow the law of the land and ensure that that is reported as well? And exit policies are followed and the hiring steps are followed. So this is one simple example about hiring. Similarly, customer engagement. So, and then I think third-party risk was very importantly told because who is a third party? The third party is a consultant who is there. The franchisee could be anybody in there, but we are dependent on the third party that they are trust-based on the compliance that we've agreed to the regulator. How do we ensure that those are managed? Life cycle is continually monitored, and ensure that corrective and preventive actions are taken in a more proactive and a predictive manner. These are aspects that are fundamental and core. IT risk at the end of the day is very core because everything that is touching point is the IT. At the end of the day, as you said, the backbone or the brains, whatever it's called, they run the entire services. So the risks associated with that, the IT risk, the operational risk, and the enterprise risk, all in one platform because it's the common services database model. That's the way the whole dotted line connects. Over to you, Amol.
Yes. I think thank you, Venu, for adding that point. And I think time is up. We have been discussing this since last 45 minutes. I didn't realize how the time has flied. It was, I think, really meaningful for me trying to understand three different aspects of services, operations, and major risks. So thank you so much, Venu, Durgaprasad, Balaji, and Dipu for giving a great perspective here. I'm so sure the readers and the viewers of ETBFSI will thoroughly enjoy this session. Thank you so much for your meaningful conversation.
And thanks, Amol, for moderating it so well, and thanks to, Venu, Balaji, and Durgaprasad, for making it very interesting. I think very good points from everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I got to learn a lot. I got to learn a lot from Dipu, Durga, and Venu.
Thanks. Same here. Yeah.
Indeed, same here. I will connect back
Likewise.
with you again.
Sure. I'd stay connected to ETBFSI.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Keep doing
Thank
such
you so
virtual
much.
sessions. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.